read. And so for anyone who doesn't know what I do here is I'm a philosopher, talk philosophy, and then, I read published works of philosophy, and then I read it, try to explain it, tell you guys what's going on, if possible, and then we rate it and review it at the end. And everyone in chat gets to review if you stick around. So if you stick around to the end, we're going to get to review it. This is a little bit of a longer paper that Vipers, the mod, requested, so we're going to try to get through it. It's just starting a little early today. So yeah. So here we go. This is The Value of Malevolent Creativity by James S. Pearson, and this was published in the Journal of Value Inquiry in 2020. So here we go. Let me drop this music a little bit. I don't know. I can't tell how loud you guys can hear the music, so let me know if it's too loud. Okay, here we go. Creativity is generally assumed to promote individual and collective flourishing. But in order to effectively foster creative agency, as opposed to haphazardly endorsing a nebulous cluster of practices and behavioral dispositions, it stands to reason that we need a sharp connection of what creativity is, or at least a sharp conception as sharp a conception as possible. Until recently, philosophers and psychologists have fairly consistently posited two necessary conditions of ascribing creativity to particular artifacts or ideas: that they are A, novel, and B, valuable. On this view, which we might call the standard view, the value condition is typically conceived in terms of objective social value. Hold on one sec. Let me drop, because I can't tell what you guys are hearing, but it's too loud for me, just in my ears. A number of commentators, however, have recently taken issue with the standard view and specifically with the value condition, protesting that it flies in the face of our use of the term creativity to refer to socially harmful phenomena. On their view, the value condition therefore either needs to be radically reformulated or altogether discarded. In the first part of this paper, I survey the various attempts that have been made to reformulate the value condition, arguing that none proves entirely satisfactory. I subsequently advance a new conception of the value criterion, one that avoids the pitfalls into which its predecessors have fallen. Value and novelty have been posited as jointly necessary conditions for ascribing creativity because, in the first place, we would not normally call a product that is valuable but lacking in originality creative. For example, standard mass-produced kitchen knife. There is then, as Kant observed, such a thing as original nonsense, which, in spite of its novelty, is entirely useless. In such cases, take the incoherent ramblings of a madman, for example. The term creative strikes us as unwarranted. Proponents of the standard view take this to be incontrovertible evidence that ascriptions of creativity are conditioned by a value criterion. All right. Value is hard. What's up, Persimmon? I suppose to know English. I only get maybe one word. What is the sorcery? Yes, Persimmon, welcome to philosophy, where all the words on the page you might individually know, but you don't understand the sentence, even if it's like properly formatted. Welcome to philosophy. It can suck horribly. Yeah. Okay, barely perceptible. Okay. I'll put it up a little bit. Because, the audio levels, I can't tell. But yeah, that's what philosophy is. Welcome into chat, though. Okay, so if you describe something as creative, you have to have value to it. Now, socially, there's a difference between personal value and social value. Say there's a work of art that only you like your kids' art. Like a parent might like their kids' art, like their little kids' art. Is that a social value, or is that some other kind of value? That seems like, you like your kid because of your kid. That's not social. That's biological. So I'm a little worried about the social aspect here, but we'll see. It is a good start for the paper. Yeah. So they went real fast. We're only one, they're big paragraphs, but we're only 2 paragraphs in, and they made a critical distinction. Their distinction is already being poked at in different ways, and the way they set up is clear enough that, okay, there is this issue, and we can already talk about it. Yeah, like just describing a standard position. Yeah, so they've already started poking at this, whatever they're calling this the standard. So, whatever this conjunction of novelty and social value is. So this is what it is. Value and novelty, yeah. Okay. Brunel's Clifton suspension bridge can, on this view, be described as creative insofar as its design was pioneering, and to the extent that it facilitates transport, the structure is of indubitable social value. Hieronymus Bosch's Garden of Earthly Delights would likewise qualify, being undeniably original in both composition and subject matter, whilst also granting the majority of its viewers valuable aesthetic pleasure. Yeah, see, this is so weird. All right, we are being granted valuable aesthetic pleasure by artworks. Is that really what happens? Like, this is why I'm worried about the value criteria here. Like, we are being granted valuable aesthetic pleasure. Is that how the world works? I don't think so, but let's let that go for now. This gels with our intuition that we express approbation when making ascriptions of creativity. It is then correspondingly difficult to imagine the adjective creative being deployed in a pejorative sense. Well, I mean, there's like creative tortures. Like, if you guys all have seen like those medieval manuscripts from Europe where they're like, pulling people apart in different ways. That might be described as creative, where they're, doing the whatever, I guess, socially approved murder at the time was. Like, yeah, that's also creative. It's just disgusting. So, yeah, I don't know. Okay, continuing. But what about instances where we predicate creativity to products that we deem to be unambiguously harmful? Whiplash movie for teaching? What's that? Whiplash movie for teaching. Okay. As Cropley et al. Have remarked, we frequently ascribe creativity to phenomena that were fashioned with the express aim of causing injury, what is usually termed malevolent or dark creativity. Oh, fun. Dark creativity. To substantiate this observation, Cropley et al. Cite cases of U.S. citizens referring to 9/11 attacks as a creative act. Yeah, so using planes as, using commercial airliners as kamikazes. I guess you could say, well, that was something unexpected use of the commercial airliners. So you could call it like creative. Yeah, your mom is so fat. Oh, there was a funny joke. I forgot it. There was a your mama's joke the other day. God damn it, me. Yeah. So, and I guess the insult, like what I guess Vipers is referring to, like insult comics, like they are funny and maybe meant to cause harm. So it's like, yeah, there's definitely something to that. Like being able to have like incisive jabs that are funny and creative. So jokes can be mean-spirited, and some people even say they are necessarily mean-spirited. But like, yeah, that's a good example. Okay, we can also quite legitimately say that people have exercised their creative capacities in fashioning novel instruments of torture. Hey, I picked that one out. Also, something to note to what I think DeMarsha was saying. Yeah, when you can start predicting the things that are going to be said, like soon after, that means they have set their problem up well, so that you can start to figure out what their train of thought is. And that's another sign of, like, if you're gonna set up a philosophy paper, that you have actually captured the ideas well, if other people are, like, following along. Okay. Barris Gout draws the conclusion that since torture instruments and the mass slaughter of innocents, both of which can be called creative products, have extreme negative value, the value condition for creative products seems to be false. To remedy this aporia, wow, okay. We're just going to go with the like silly Greek words now because we can. Aporia. Cropley et al. Claim that we need to adopt a functional notion of creativity. They maintain that if acts are effective in aporia, let me get the proper definition. It's like, something you didn't expect or something, whatever. Aporia. Let me not fuck it up. Yeah. Difficulty, puzzlement. Yes. Everything just broke for a second. Whatever. Okay, Viper says in philosophy, aporia is lacking passage, difficulty passages or puzzlement. Yeah, it's a conundrum. It's a blind spot, I think, is kind of like aporia, something you can't get through. Okay. Yeah, functional notion of creativity. They maintain that if facts are effective in achieving their purposes, they may be said to have displayed creativity despite the fact that the products do not benefit our common good. Yeah, so now we're going from social good or to common good, because like you can still have a good even if it's for a very small group of people. Okay. X hypothesis, we may label a novel product creative if we judge it to be or to have been instrumental value with respect to the goal of the creative agent. Otherwise put, they consider the specific goals of the individual predicating creativity, herein referred to as the predicator, as irrelevant to the value condition. While a number of critics have convincingly rejected the functional model qua solution to the issue of malevolent creativity, they are yet to fashion a cogent alternative. Yeah, so if you make everything relative to the people that are interested in this, then this was like my example with the parent that really likes their kids' art. The kids' art might suck. They might be like 6 years old and they might be a terrible artist. I mean, assuming they're not like a Picasso or something. Because Picasso could paint when he was like 3, but paint well when he was like 3. But like, say your parent likes this, so that would actually make sense. Like you say, oh, it's so creative. No, your kid's art is terrible. It's not very creative. It's not novel. It's not interesting. But to that parent, they see it. But if you relativize that whole statement, it's not a very useful notion of creativity. But you can see where someone's coming from because we do use it in that way. Parents call their kids like terrible art creative, even though it's not. Yes. Viper's copy pastaing skills are second to none. Aha. Things we learn. All right. In order to address this problem, the author begins by briefly mapping out the concept of value insofar as it is pertinent to our subject matter. In section 2, they critically assess the existing objections and alternatives to the functional model. Then they present the novel objection, which comprises the critical thesis of this article, that we should not consider malevolent creativity a genuine counterexample to the standard view. I marshal evidence that suggests that even malevolent creative products often carry positive value for the predicator. Yeah, the torturer likes their tools. This brings the author to their positive thesis that the value of a creative phenomenon should be conceived as an inherent form of value to the predicator, that is, provided her predication is grounded in her own appropriate experience of the phenomenon in question, and we will be examining what qualifies as an appropriate experience in due course. To be more precise, I contend that creative value ultimately consists in a positively valenced, though not straightforwardly pleasurable, affect of surprise, which is elicited by salient original phenomena. I conclude by gesturing towards some of the practical ramifications of these findings. Okay. So what it looks like is, I write a lot of stuff, and, I use pencils sometimes, and I tend to use fountain pens most of the time. I get myself more and more fountain pens because I get tired of the ones I use on a daily basis. You use the same thing over and over. Sometimes you want to break it. Changing your tools that you use can change your interactions with the world. Say I write only terrible things and I'm responsible for lots of people being dead because of what I write. I like my creative writing. It helps me make all these terrible articles that get people killed. So that little bit of creative inspiration, using a different pen to write with a different flair, all of a sudden is now enabling genocide. I get it. I like my flair. I'm using it to do terrible things, but the terrible things are outside of what's going on with me. This makes sense off the bat. I don't know if anyone wants to go this way, but that's what it looks like to me. Viper says, I like that he seeks to be inclusive by using the pronoun her, but implies that women enjoy torturing people. Yeah, that's right. So, but you got to keep in mind, if you exclude women from being evil too, that is also, treating them unequally. When they were making the movie, what's the one with the bees in the mouth? Candyman. When they were making Candyman, they were a little bit worried about, it's set in a black community, and they were worried about having like this guy be like a demon. But they went to the black community and they were like, the black community was like, nah, this movie's like looks pretty good. And it would be racist if you couldn't have a black demon. Like, why couldn't you have a black demon? It's like, they were like, nah, this is like all good. Like, and they were like, I think there's a quote on Wikipedia, like the council that they went to in like the neighborhood was like, this is good fun. So it's like, yeah, I like the Candyman movie. So you want to be inclusive in this way. Women can be like tortured too, I guess. So, okay, a brief typology of value. The philosophical debate concerning the correct taxonomy of value is intricate and ongoing. However, for our purposes, it should suffice to draw two key distinctions in how we ascribe value. First, there's the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic value. There are myriad phenomena that we value not in themselves, but on the account of what they provide with us. I do not, for example, value my screwdriver in itself, but insofar as it enables me to repair my bicycle. Well, that's what I was saying. Like, this is exactly it. Like pencils versus what you do with your pencils. Careful, chat. Nor in turn do I value my bicycle in itself, but only insofar as it enables me to tour the countryside on the weekends. I can therefore be said to extrinsically value the screwdriver and the bicycle, both of which are valuable only as means to ends that are extrinsic to these two objects. The pleasure that I take in the act of touring the countryside, however, does not serve any extrinsic purpose, and insofar as I value it in and of itself, it can be said to apportion it. I can be said to apportion intrinsic value. Now, you can imagine like a tool. So if you watch Kill Bill, like a movie, I hope you guys have seen Kill Bill. Doesn't matter. There's a scene where the bride gets a hold of some swords. She really likes swords, and these are like the best swords, and she is so happy just holding the sword. She values holding the sword because it is just so well made, and she can feel it. She also values the sword because she's going to be able to cut up many, many people with it, but she values the sword in itself for itself also. So this can also apply to tools that you really like because it is just so well made for you. Speaking of a woman that likes killing lots of people. All right. The second relevant distinction lies between instrumental and inherent value, both of which are subspecies of extrinsic value. An object has instrumental value an object has instrumental value if it only has value in relation to some other object or activity. If my bike is stolen, my screwdriver is emptied of value, even though it does not itself undergo any other exchange. On the other hand, as C.I. Lewis argues, any object possesses inherent worth if its value is disclosed or disclosable by observation of this object itself and not by examining some other object. DeMarshall asks, can we call that functionalist thinking right? Maybe in sociology? Yeah. So you're looking at how things are functioning, and that's like this extrinsic thing. Now, the intrinsic is like you just like it for itself. Like there's no what's the function of, I guess the function of like just going for a nice walk in the area is not health. It's that you just like the functional thing of walking around. So it's like there is no function of walking around outside of that. So you can treat the walk as inherent, but like the functional of like what the bike does is it gives you the tour. So is that right? Let me know. Okay. Yeah, so in other words, continuing the paper though, in other words, such objects are valued on account of the pleasure that I take in beholding them. Yeah, so like I was saying, you can behold, like the bride beholds the sword in Kill Bill. Like I can behold a really nice pen and be like, ooh, I like this pen. A painting is thus inherently valuable to the extent that I enjoy the pleasure that it elicits and not because it serves any extrinsic function. See, and this is weird. If you think, like they said earlier, you get the beauty from the painting. Well, is the painting beautiful in itself, or do you get the aesthetic good of beauty from the painting? Now we've got a problem. It's how you actually evaluate aesthetics. You have to be careful with what they said. If they said as above, that like the beauty is in the painting and that's what you get from it, or is the beauty someplace else and the painting just like, is an aesthetic pleasure that you're generating? Careful here. I'm not entirely sure they've got this straight, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay. However, we might also say that Brunel's suspension bridge has inherent value insofar as viewing its well-proportioned, symmetrical form can be a pleasurable experience, although unlike the painting, it nonetheless also serves an instrumental function, that is, as a piece of civil engineering. As such, inherent and instrumental value are mutually compatible and both can be coherently ascribed to a single object. Okay, so they're trying to be like, even if it does some function too, it can also be both. Sockno says, yeah, that is a vulnerability within the paper. Yeah. So, but I mean, they're trying to, make it like it's no big deal. Like, it may not be a big deal for the rest of the paper. It's like, but you can like sort of waffle between the two, which they kind of do right here. But if it doesn't matter for the rest of the paper, a little bit of waffling on a separate topic is no big deal. Okay, so the question is now, where does creative value fit in this heuristic schema? According to Cropley et al., a sharp conceptual line runs between functional and aesthetic creativity. They controversially argue that for a product to be considered functionally creative, it must possess not only novelty, but also relevance and effectiveness. That is to say, it must also satisfy the need for which it was created. Without relevance and effectiveness, the product is merely aesthetic. Excuse me. For Cropley et al., then, the value of a creative product can take either an inherent or instrumental form, or both, depending on whether that product exhibits aesthetic or functional creativity, or both. Yeah. Cheers. They aver that the value of malevolent creativity can only be explained in functional terms, since it is obviously aesthetically repugnant. For reasons that will be elaborated below, this strikes the author as a radically myopic conception of malevolent creativity. Yeah, so they're assuming all aesthetics is good if you say, well, like a torture device has to be aesthetically repugnant. I mean, you could have a really pretty, like, knife, and you could use it as a torture device. So, like, I'm not sure why you'd say it's obviously aesthetically repugnant. Like, knives can be cool. People like knives. All right. Author continues, as we've already seen, Cropley et al. Theorize that we can conceive of the beneficiary of creative value from two perspectives, that of the predicator and her social group, and that of the creative agent. By their lights, the counterexample of malevolent creativity debunks the predicator-oriented standard view of the creative value, since it evidences the fact that individuals ascribe creativity to products that they judge to be of definite negative value, both to themselves and to their collective. Yeah. Exactly, Vipers. Hattori Hanzo swords. That's the sword in the in Kill Bill. Yeah, depending on the medium, says Sockno. Yeah, so we're getting relativized, and that scene where the bride is picking up the Hattori Hanzo sword is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I don't know of. I'm sure there's other scenes in like just the corpus of cinema where someone seems so happy at finding a tool, but like I really like that scene because I feel like both all the actors in the scene really understand like how happy you are when you find something that just works for you, and you're like, this is for me, this is mine. Like, yay. And you can tell, like, Hattori Hanzo, it's not spoiling a lot. Like, she's going to pick one of the swords up, and he says, not that one, pick a different one up. And it's like, that one was the perfect one for her, or whatever. Yeah, it's a trope. That's fair, Vipers. I'm sure it's around, it's just, that's the sort of one where, I was watching, what was on TV last night? Boondock Saints. And, there's a scene in Boondock Saints where the two main characters get some weapons, and they're just so happy, like kids in a candy store style. So it's like another, stolen scene basically from someplace else. But like, kids in a candy store, and do they find anything that's like perfect for them? No, but they're just so happy with their new tools that they get to play all their, like, they're gonna have so much fun to do stuff with. So it's like, yeah. But I just remember the one from Kill Bill because I thought it was well done. Okay. It is the evaluative perspective of the creative agent that is, they claim, relevant in such cases. Yeah, so the person using the tool. Sockno says, yeah, you could have a heretic's fork that could be considered art, but then to another person, it is repugnant because of what it was used for. Exactly. Vipers, yes. From the classic Star Wars. An elegant weapon for a more civilized age. Yeah, you're going to go slash people in half with your lightsaber. Okay. A functionally creative product only has to satisfy the need for which it was created in order to be labeled creative. On this view, even for the victims, the 9/11 attacks qualify as creative product by dint of the fact that they served their intended purpose for Al-Qaeda. You know, the idea that we were so... I'm from the United States, I mean, I'm a New Yorker, that we were so easily attacked by some stolen airplanes lends me to say, yeah, there was creativity in the method of assault against us. Now, again, it's a repugnant thing to kill lots of innocent people. I understand the reasons why they thought it was a good idea from their side, but like, I'm not very happy about it myself. But like, was it a creative idea to hijack commercial airliners and use them as weapons, military weapons? Yeah, I'll grant them that they had to be at least somewhat clever to do this. Not the first time this has been done, of course, but yeah. Okay, for Cropley et al., the value that conditions cases of malevolent creativity is therefore considered as an instrumental form of value for the creative agent. Yeah, so you relativize to the people who were trying to come up with the idea for whatever their purpose was. The creative agent, be them terrorists or torturers or whatever. And as always, I am not endorsing any of this stuff. This is what we are talking about in the paper. So yes, this is an over 18 stream. Again, if any of you are young, do not be telling me because you will be kicked out immediately. All right. Against this, I will argue that there is a single global form of value that conditions the predication of creativity as opposed to different forms depending on whether the product in question is aesthetic or functional in kind. This is an inherent form of value for the predicator. But before substantiating this thesis, we first need to consider some of the existing objections and alternatives to the functional model of creativity. 2. Objections and alternatives to the functional model of malevolent creativity. The most straightforward objection to the functional model is raised by Novitz, who denies that malevolent creativity actually constitutes a form of creativity at all, and hence does not present us with a true concept counterexample to the standard view. Stockton says, yeah, this is too intense for 16-year-olds, not gonna lie. I mean, if you're joking, I would agree with you. If you're not joking, I'd agree with you. The trouble is I have to deal with Twitch terms of service and other prudish and weird behavior on the internet. It's like, yeah. I mean, I would have no problem with this paper as a 16-year-old. I'm sure there are 16-year-olds that might start objecting to this. I probably would think this is fun. I think, ooh, torture devices. Yeah, they could be pretty. So, okay. He seeks to recategorize such malevolent activity as ingenious destructiveness, thereby reframing it as a pseudo-problem since it no longer represents an anomalous instance of creativity. Yet, as Gout rejoins, this, quote, failure to capture many people's sometimes equivocal intuitions that there is something creative about these evil acts, end quote. Yeah, I mean, you could redefine the problem and be like, oh, that torture device, that's not creative. We're going to call that ingenious destructiveness. But changing the terms doesn't solve the problem. That's just defining it away. So that's it. Yeah, exactly, Vipers. So it's like, you can't even, like, it's funny on Reddit now. Apparently, any mention of the word Luigi, the name Luigi, you have a chance of getting, like, your comment deleted because they are so afraid of promoting violence against healthcare CEOs, I guess. So, yeah. But yeah, Luigi Mangione is also pretty. I think that is a true statement. I agree with you, Vipers. Okay. If we accept malevolent creativity as a valid counterexample, however, it still remains to be seen how effectively it can be accommodated by Cropley et al.'s functionalist model. Gout has rightly questioned the explanatory force of the modified value condition posited by the functional notion of creativity, specifically that the product satisfied the need for which it was created. This implies that had the terrorists' acts been foiled, they no longer no longer have been creative, but one might suppose that their creativity depended on thinking up the idea in the first place rather than being successful in carrying it out. And that's what I was saying. Like, the idea that they got around our defenses is because it was a work of creativity and the failure of our defense here in the United States. But like, even if they had failed, and only by like, some quick-witted or quick-thinking people here in the U.S., the fact that like it wasn't just some standard attack would have still, deemed it creative, even though it had not succeeded in the way the terrorists had hoped. So it's like, it's still a failure of defense, but they were more creative than we realized, unfortunately. Dissatisfied with the functional model, Berry's gout proffers his own alternative conception of the value condition. What is essential, he avers, is that creative products be considered valuable of their kind. Okay, so is relativizing the creativity to the existing instances of that sort of thing. So, of all the attacks that have been made on the U.S., when they hijacked commercial airliners and used them as kamikaze planes, was that a creative of all the terrorist acts that they could have done? Yeah. Okay, a creative product does not have to be valuable for anyone on God's view, so long as it effectively fulfills the criteria that define the species of object to which it is supposed to belong. A terrorist act only needs to be effective at causing terror, for example, but does not have to be of value for either the terrorist or the victims and their society. And the terrorist plan would only have to be good qua terrorist plan, so would not have to be successfully enacted. Hence, Gout's model is able to accommodate the counterexamples of the failed plot. The value of a creative product for the predicator is, according to Gout, conditional, since it depends on the relative injuriousness or usefulness of the type of phenomena in question. Yeah. So you could have a really, really good torture device that never gets used. And it's like, well, was it a creative torture device? Sure, never got used to torture anyone, so it never got implemented, but like it was creative, you could say. Okay. Hills and Bird likewise invoke the counterexample of malevolent creativity in order to contest the standard view. They convincingly reject Gout's alternative by pointing out that any given product invariably belongs to myriad kinds, each of which it instantiates with a different degree of perfection. Yeah, like, you could probably, be John Wick and kill 4 people with a fucking pencil. And so it's like, well, this could be a torture device or a murder device just the same. I mean, I never murdered anyone, but I write stuff with my pencil. But it could also be you could John Wick somebody with that. Okay. Yeah. This makes it practically impossible to establish in any objective manner the ideal kind against which a given product ought to be judged. Typically, Hills and Bird add, the most relevant kind will be that intended by the creator. Yet they refuse to admit this as a valid solution, arguing that it fails to account for the counterexample of a novel torture device that we consider to be a failure. Quote, perhaps it causes death too quickly without enough suffering along the way. End quote. Although it fails to fulfill the criteria of its intended kind, we would say that they say, still be inclined to call it creative and affirm that creativity had been exercised in its construction. What's up, No Talent Idiot Writes Music? We are reading a philosophy paper on the value of malevolent creativity. Basically, what do we mean by creative, and can bad things be creative too? So yeah, check it out. I read philosophy here. I don't know how you found this place, but I'm a philosopher. We read and try to explain philosophy, and then we rate it at the end because, well, everyone can decide whether my rating system is good or bad, and am I malevolently creative for developing this. DeMarshall likes it. You're glad you just need to be tuned in. Yeah, I think this is interesting stuff. So this is kind of fun, where you get to think about okay, what are the different ways where even if you're being evil, you may have something interesting to have given to the world aesthetically or creatively, something like that. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Continuing. Their idiosyncratic response to the problem is to discard the value condition altogether. To justify this radical and counterintuitive move, they highlight the fact that creative individuals produce swaths of products that are of negligible, if not outright negative value. They underscore the vast number of useless theories that have been concocted by individuals whom we call creative. For example, Tesla's output included worthless ideas for a thought camera and a death ray. That's true, and I have stacks of notebooks full of bad ideas. It is far sounder, they claim, to conceive of creativity as a disposition to produce many novel ideas through the imagination and the motivation to bring those ideas to fruition. Their novel conception of creativity is unfortunately not as persuasive as their criticism of gout. Hills and Bird take individuals whom we consider to be creative and examine their dispositions that generate the products that warrant our ascriptions of creativity to said individuals. Yeah, so if they're just saying it's what the creative people do, that's really unhelpful. It's like, yeah, creative is as creative does. Like, that's not gonna get you very far in philosophy. Just be like, well, you know, creative people are creative. It's like, thanks, you're so helpful. Okay. So continuing, on inspecting these dispositions, they discover that many of the products that result therefrom are either useless or harmful, and they summarily conclude that creativity does not invariably generate value. This, however, is a clear-cut case of putting the cart before the horse. What we are interested in is what originally grounds our description of certain individuals as creative, and it is indubitably on the basis of the creative products that they are, that they fashion, that we do so. What's up, Chocolate Mints? How you doing? Thus, we first identify products that are creative and only then extend this label to the agents responsible for fashioning said products. This is why a musician needs to write creative songs in order to be considered creative. Sock now says, thought camera listens to a person's thought. Camera would be good to see what I'm dealing with psychologically, but then the death ray is like, what is this, Star Wars? Yeah, so, you know, Tesla has a great name nowadays, but I think a lot of his stuff was crackpot. So, I mean, he did some really cool stuff, but then has a lot of crackpot stuff too. And so, yeah. It's like, if you didn't know, like, he has a lot of crackpot shit. He also like ran up debts, and like he said that like he had like some grand like invention in a box, but that like somebody should never open it because it's very dangerous. And so we gave him the box, and you know, they were like, oh yeah, good, we have your like, you're the great man's like invention, and we'll make a lot of money in the future. And he leaves, and they say, oh, your debt's canceled. And they open the box up a little while later, and they find that it's got like some marbles and like some screws in there, and there's nothing in there. It's like, yeah, it's kind of sad, actually. Okay. It is arguably true that a specific set of capacities and dispositions are responsible for generating the products that justify labeling certain individuals creative, but it is not the case that once these individuals enjoy this appellation, everything that they produce with those dispositions and capacities can then be considered creative. To claim so much is to illegitimately reduce creativity to an objective, identifiable set of behaviors and mental processes. But if we wish to understand how we predicate creativity, we need to focus on the relation of the predicator to specific products, independent of any knowledge that she may have regarding the relative creativity of the agent who fashioned those products. Accordingly, Hills and Bird's attempt to refute and replace the value criterion does not bear scrutiny, and the issue of malevolent creativity remains stubbornly unresolved. Sock now says, I hate the shit people have done to his name, like fuck Musk. Yeah, well, Musk is a much, much worse person than Tesla. Tesla, you know, actually produced some like really cool science. Musk has bought companies and does a lot of marketing. We can do without that. So, yeah. The inherent value of malevolent creativity. What do we got here, Vipers? I'm going to mute this for a sec. Oh, this stuff. I don't know if you can hear it. Yeah. So yeah, that's see, that's the creative thing right there. It's It's like, it is to the right purpose. It is going to like screw with the person and shove a live snake up their ass, but it also is not what they were going for. So yeah. Oh, can barely hear it. Yeah, so that was too low. Why? I'm sorry. You guys can click on the link if you need. I could barely hear it myself, but I don't. Yeah, I'm sorry. Chocolate is, I really like one-way valve Tesla made for fluids, no moving parts. Well, that's cool. Tesla invented, like, cool shit sometimes. Like, he did. Yeah. Yeah, Tesla valve. Cool. All right. Anyway, the inherent value of malevolent creativity. Like Novitz, but for markedly different reasons, I will now defend the claim that malevolent creativity represents a pseudo-counterexample to the standard view of the value criterion. There is, as we will presently see, credible evidence that creative products, by reason of their salient originality, are perfectly capable of eliciting a positive valenced effect. We might denote this effect surprise, though particular subspecies of surprise, one that has features in common with the emotions of awe, wonder, and curiosity. Yeah, so you might be, I take it y'all have seen The Princess Bride. They have a torture machine in The Princess Bride, and, you know, as a big machine that does torture, but it's a very big and complicated machine, you might find it like a kind of awe-inspiring, not like a good awe, but you're like, wow, look at the complexity and the like well-madeness of that machine. So, okay. From the outset, the author should emphasize that their claim is not revisionist in nature. They are not suggesting that creative phenomena that we previously held to be reprehensible should henceforth be viewed in a beneficent light. My contention is that we would do well to consider such phenomena as being of net instead of absolute negative value. Yeah, so they're still relativizing. If our ascription of creativity to malevolent products is conditioned by even a sliver of positive value, or even if doubt can be meaningfully cast on the absoluteness of such products' negative value for the predicator, then one could defensibly claim that the predications of creativity could be conditioned by this silver lining. At the very least, malevolent creativity would lose its hitherto unquestioned status as counter-evidence to the standard view. Yeah. Stockton says, we live in that era. You found related memes for daylight saving time? Yeah, maybe. We live in that era, but a time machine with new people who have thoughts like that was this. Oh yeah, that scene. Fair. Okay. We should begin by critically examining the evidence often adduced as proof for the claims that malevolent creativity is perceived in exclusively negative terms by predicators. As mentioned above, Cropley et al., among others, cite the 9/11 tax in support of precisely this claim. Closer examination, however, reveals this example to be far less damning for the standard view than might at first be suspected. In the first place, there is empirical research verifying that curiosity, rather than empathy, anger, fear, or personal distress, was one of the principal emotions motivating many U.S. citizens to follow the media coverage of the 9/11 attacks. And curiously, of course, curiosity is not a negatively valenced emotion. We should also consider the provocative comments made by composer Karl-Heinz Stockhausen and artist Damien Hirst apropos the event. Note that although neither were U.S. citizens, both were members and representatives of the liberal Occident that was under attack. The former scandalously claimed that the terrorists had performed the greatest work of art imaginable for the whole cosmos. Quote, minds achieving something in an act that we couldn't even dream of in music, people rehearsing like mad for 10 years, preparing fanatically for a concert and then dying. Just imagine what happened there. You have people who are that focused on a performance, and then 5,000 people are dispatched to the afterlife in a single moment. I couldn't do that. By comparison, we composers are nothing. Artists, too, sometimes try to go beyond the limits of what is feasible and conceivable so that we wake up, so that we open ourselves to another world. End quote. Yeah, so they're saying, look, these people changed the world. And if you consider this in, like, art can also change the world. So if you're seeing it in that way, well, they both change the world in different ways, and the artist can't even conceive of the terrorist act as something that they could, get close to in terms of changing the world. It's like, yeah, also you're not killing people most of the time with your painting, though, or music. Okay. Echoing Stockhausen, Damien Hirst commented that, quote, "The thing about 9/11 is that it's kind of an artwork in its own right. It was wicked, but it was devised in this way for this kind of impact. It was devised visually," end quote. He went on to describe the spectacle of the plane smashing into the Twin Towers as visually stunning, adding that, quote, "You've got to hand it to them on some level because they've achieved something which nobody would have ever thought possible, especially to a country as big as America," end quote. Yeah, that was the issue. We could not conceive of this. You might burst out eardrums but not killing people. That's fair for musicians. But, if you're going to a concert where it's expected to be loud, then, a lot of people bring earplugs to concerts or loud concerts. Okay, we might question the earnestness of these inflammatory statements, and it's certainly worth noting that during the ensuing furor, both Hirst and Stockhausen apologized for and partly retracted their respective remarks. We might further seriously doubt the extent to which these views reflect the typical liberal Westerners' experience of the attack. To be sure, Hirst and Stockhausen massively overemphasized the positive aspect of the event, and yet I would nonetheless submit that their views are to some degree comprehensible to those who identify an element of creativity as opposed to one of pure evil in the attacks. As insensitive and hellaciously unpalatable as their comments might be, this does not make them absurd or nonsensical. Yeah, I mean, just speaking from my own perspective, the terrorists circumvented our defenses. You have to be creative to get around, competent defenses. Now, how competent were our defenses? It doesn't matter. We had defenses. They got around them. That took effort. That was a creative work in terms of circumventing whatever standard safety procedures we had. Gupta says, "How often would you say the philosophy you studied in college got ethical or emotional?" I didn't really study a whole lot of ethics. I didn't like ethics. I still don't do very much ethics. If you want to go study ethics, you go hang out with my buddy. If you want to talk ethics on Twitch, you go hang out with my buddy Aris. He is a professor of ethics, and he will talk ethics over on his stream. I don't do much. I mean, what do you mean got ethical or emotional? Yeah. Nah, that's not how it... I mean, it matters to my well-being what I'm thinking about, so it gets emotional inherently. But, I mean, the idea that, the philosophy, I had to take standard courses. But, yeah. Yeah, Claudio. Well, this is a long paper, and so I started early because this is a request from Vipers. So, yeah. I mean, 18 pages. We are almost on page 9. Let's see. We are here. Let me go see. I mean, what do we got to get to? Yeah, we got to get all the way through this, so, yeah. Basically. Now, there are a good number of footnotes on this, so it's not a full 18, but it's close. So, Gupta says, "I'm not interested in ethics either, is why I asked, what type of philosophy do you prefer? I do logic, philosophy of science, metaphysics, theory of knowledge. Also, what types of philosophy did you have disagreements that would not let finish masters? What was the disagreement?" The disagreement was I thought they were fucking wrong, and they thought I was an idiot. That's the disagreement. It's not very complicated. It's not... They thought I wasn't... Look, I wasn't getting anything out of being in school, and they thought they weren't, I wasn't, listening to them. Everyone was correct. That was the disagreement. Viper says, "Terrorism being performative makes a lot of sense. Whether or not value is placed on human life is a different issue. For example, Mandela bombed South African infrastructure, but ensured buildings were vacant first." Yeah, that's a great point. And so it's if, say they had blown up the trade centers without any loss of life, it still would have been terrible to, lose the buildings, but, no one would have died. And then that would have been more that sort of thing. Gaudier says, "Christians crucifying Christ again for that eternal life would be proof they follow the church over Christ himself." Yeah. So. Yep. Okay. What Hurst's and Stockhausen's remarks at least make clear is that the absolute negative value of the attack is not self-evident. What is particularly germane to the argument I developed below, and what I would therefore like to accent, is Stockhausen's and Hurst's praise of the terrorists for having performed something previously thought impossible. With an air of awe and wonder, Hurst thus claims that he was stunned by the events, and Stockhausen describes the perpetrators as having gone beyond the limits of what is feasible. As author Ian McEwan has aptly put it, 9/11 outstrips the imagination. McEwan also pertinently reports how he himself, in the face of this previously unimaginable experience, quote, hungrily, ghoulishly consumed media coverage of the event, how he became, quote, an information junkie fixated in a state of sickened wonderment. Yeah, this is the old watching train crashes. So we've been doing this before. Like, train wrecks are, in some sense, interesting to us. They are terrible, but like watching someone, things explode, we like in some sense, watching things break down. Okay. Hurst, Stockhausen, and McEwan are not the first to associate that which appears grievously harmful with the positive valence effect of awe and wonder. This nexus has been remarked time and again by theorists of the sublime. Burke, Kant, and Schiller, among others, consistently make two empirical observations. First, they stress that overwhelming terror, horror, and the threat of destruction very often elicit quasi-positive effects, counterintuitive as this may be. And we've had discussions here, and I know Aris has discussions over on his channel, of horror movies, and why do we like them so much? Like slasher movies. What do you get out of them? And that is, a recurring theme. I know, because he likes that sort of stuff. He talks about it every so often. So it's like, yeah, this is a thing where we like horror movies. We like slasher movies. They are fun. Why? Chocolate says, the current Treasury Secretary was involved in a firm that lost a lot of people in 9/11. He may not be a great juror, judge, or whatever of some things. Rudy Giuliani was mayor of New York at the time. Everyone in New York hated Rudy Giuliani. They all hated Giuliani. Then he got himself on TV with a lot of photo shoots, and then he became America's mayor. It's like, just because you were here at the time and you have like some relation to it does not make you a good person. Giuliani just milked it for years and years, and I assume that the alcohol finally ruined him, and that's why you don't hear about him anymore. He's like off in some facility at this point. But like, just because you were associated with New York back then does not mean you are not the shitty person you were the day before. Yeah, everyone hates Giuliani stock now. I'm with you on that one. But we hated him before that here too. So yeah. Okay, recalling McEwan's sickened wonderment, they hold experience of this sort, that is, of the sublime, to be associated with an amalgam of agreeable and disagreeable emotional responses. I mean, we like strong emotions, especially in our art. I mean, this is the whole point of the catharsis of the ancient Greek theater, that you were supposed to release all the emotions, and that's what you get in these sort of horrible things too. All right. Schiller, for instance, states that the sensation of the sublime is of a dual sort, comprising an admixture of melancholy and joy. Others have further remarked that this positive effect is not to be confounded with pleasure in any simple sense of the term. Kant states that the delight in the sublime does not so much involve positive pleasure as admiration or respect, or what he later calls in the third critique, negative delight. Tamworth Reresby equates the sublime with the marvelous and with that which produces a certain admiration mixed with wonder and surprise. That is, not with pleasure in any straightforward sense. John Dennis takes a slightly different line, arguing that the greatest enthusiastic terror, typically of the sublime, not to be confused with ordinary terror, which in turn we should take care not to equate with fear. Socknow says he had a book on leadership that was one of your dad's shelf. You threw the fucking book away. I expect Giuliani didn't actually write the book. It was probably ghostwritten, but I take the point. Okay, ordinary terror is distinct from fear insofar as it is more sudden and marked by a sensation of surprise in response to an approaching evil, threatening destruction, or very great trouble. By contrast, great enthusiastic terror evokes the effects of wonder and astonishment. The purpose of this cursory survey of the philosophy of the sublime is to illustrate that even phenomena that we consider astoundingly harmful and of net negative value often elicit positively valenced emotions, emotions that are intrinsically valuable. This possibility has been conspicuously overlooked by existing analyses of dark creativity, all of which paint a simplistic picture of how we effectively and evaluatively respond to phenomena that we consider injurious. And, I'm of that generation that loved Harry Potter. I still like Harry Potter, even though Rowling sucks. But you can always remember when Harry went into Ollivander's, the wand maker, and the wand maker was always very impressed with Voldemort. And it's like he had like a reverence for him. It's like, yeah, he did terrible things, but he says great but terrible. It's like he just quotes it. Yes, he did great, like terrible things, but they were great too. Yeah. Okay, it was a commons secretary, not treasury. Fine. Sock says, yeah, definitely ghost-ridden, but still not having that shit anywhere near your family. Fair enough. Yeah. So these shitheads in government, it's so bad. I mean, and the worst part is, it's like it's so obvious is sometimes. I mean, from anyone from New York, what Giuliani became, it's like, it's just so obvious. Like, yeah. It's like you see these people over time. So the media, like the controlled media and their like PR firms, like you see through that because you knew them before and you see what's been like done to them. So it's just obvious what's happening now. It's like, no. And like that's also part of the thing with Trump. I remember Trump from the 80s and 90s, like what people said about him. He was always this shithead. Always. It's like he got himself on TV as this great businessman. The only time he was a great businessman was when he was on TV. Never before. So yeah. Hasn't NYC been always as corrupt as shit? Yes, it is. It always has been too. And the idea that he was cleaning up New York is bullshit. He cleaned up New York. He got rid of the Italian mob for the Russian mob. That's basically what happened, it looks like, is that the Russian mob served up the Italian mob to him and he prosecuted them, but that just left the vacuum for the Russian mob. And so he was basically, getting kickbacks from Russian mob people. It's just like, it's so dumb. Just so dumb. So it's like, okay, you traded one bad guy for another, and then he was like, oh, I cleaned up New York. It's like, no, you didn't. Anyway. The term sublime is, to be sure, unapt in the vast majority of instances of malevolent creativity. Few would invoke the grandiose vocabulary of the sublime to refer to torture devices, terrorist attacks, or the inventive chicanery of corrupt businessmen, which is what we have in government now. But I mean, what's it called? If you look at someone like, Cthulhu or one of these cosmic horrors, like that sort of thing, like the just like unable to comprehend the greatness of like this horror that was near us, like that, we could still be in awe of a cosmic horror. So yeah. Cody says, where to look for hope these days besides Star Trek? I don't know, Sai. Yeah, there was a quote that said, like, they couldn't even, like, make Star Trek. It's too hopeful of a show. Like, it'd be too unrealistic nowadays. So, there's definitely got to be, like, media out there. People are still writing books, still fiction, whatever. But it's like, yeah, it's, you can't look at the news. The news is not meant to make you happy. It's just not how it's set up. Okay, yet there are strong grounds for supposing that if these are saliently original to the predicator of creativity, they nonetheless evoke a positively charged effect. As our review of the sublime implied, we should not think of this effect as being straightforwardly pleasurable. The relative weakness of this effect is irrelevant, as is the fact that in cases of malevolent creativity, it tends to be outweighed by other negatively valenced affects. The mere fact of its plausible existence within the overall calculus involved in determining the value of malevolent creativity products is sufficient to demonstrate that such products do not so simply contravene the standard view of the value criterion. It's like, yeah. It's like you can be in awe of like how dumb or terrible something is, but it's like you can still be in awe. News is alcohol, it's a depressant, yeah. But I mean, that's the goal of a lot of TV, is to keep you watching TV. And so they need a new tragedy every few seconds. So that's what they show you to keep you hooked on that like little dopamine hit of like, oh my God, righteous anger or whatever it is that they get you to experience. And that, that's the thing. How do you, yeah, exactly. And that's why people play video games. And so that's good. It's a good use of video games. There was a kid broke the Tetris. He broke Tetris. I was going to say broke Tetris world record, but he broke Nintendo Tetris. He overflowed the buffer in Tetris. He played so long and so well that he literally overflowed the Nintendo buffer in Tetris. And it's a known effect that playing Tetris and other games like Tetris are actually good for mitigating trauma. Apparently the kid's dad died not long before and was playing Tetris, and it really helped him, and he got so good at it that he was able to play longer and better than anyone else in the history of Tetris. And that's a long history at this point. So yeah. So what is this? YouTube link we got from Viper. Blue Scooty. Aha. Yeah. So let me guess. Blue Scooty.
Actually beat the game of Tetris. Yes! Blue Scooty, that's his online name, who's an American Tetris player, and he's 13 years old. He essentially made it all the way to the point where the game just crashed. It was deemed like more or less impossible. At level 20.
Okay. Alright, and just so you know, if you see the original Twitch clip, because he was broadcasting on Twitch, and you see the chat, I'm in the chat when he does it. You see my GG fly by. I am, because I play Minesweeper, one of the overlapping Minesweeper Tetris communities put out a blast that he was getting close. I was in chat when he did that. So if you find a clip with the chat, I'm there. You see Nogre Zero like fly by or whatever. So it's like, yeah, I saw that. I was there. Okay, where was I? I have no idea. Okay, yeah, so not everything that is evil is 100% evil. Like, people still made it. They liked what they were doing. Okay, but what evidence is there to support the thesis that the evocation of this positively valenced affect conditions are ascriptions of creativity? All that has so far been established is that these effects can be elicited by phenomena that we deem harmful and of net negative value. I wonder if it's the rapid eye movement. Lots of evidence support that EMDR and processing member theory stuff. I don't know. Like, could be, Claudio. I don't know. Yeah. Continuing, in order to address this question, we should examine the relation between the perception of novelty and the affects of surprise, awe, and wonder. Margaret Bowden, oh man, I have to put the volume down. It's like, I'm sorry, I know I can't quite tell where the volume is for you, but if I change anything, it's no good. Margaret Bowden maintains that in addition to originality and value, the ability to elicit surprise constitutes one of the defining criteria of creative products. Gout, however, rejects surprise as a valid criterion. He objects that the condition for something being new, considered original, is that it must surprise us, that is, it must have salient newness. As such, on his reasoning, the surprise criterion merely restates the formal originality criterion in effective terms. To call something original is precisely to affirm it as surprising. What Gout's criticism of Bowden inadvertently reveals is that there are conceptual grounds for claiming that a positively valenced affect conditions effect conditions our ascriptions of creativity. In saying that we find something creative, we are expressing an emotional response of surprise, and it seems out of place to construe this surprise in negative terms. Bowden certainly does not, even in the case of malevolent phenomena. Philomena Kunk criticizes anti-intellectualism. Okay? Don't know what that's in response to, Chocolate Mints. Okay. Yeah, well, let me know. To be sure, surprise often denotes negatively valenced affects. Negatively valenced affect, such as in the case of shocks and nasty surprises, for example. Nevertheless, surprise can also take a positively valenced form. As we have seen, it is what lends the sublime its appealing note. This agreeable species of surprise is standardly referred to as either wonder or awe. I'll drink again. I was drinking before I saw that. Oh, okay, the whole Strek thing not being possible to make now? Yeah, fair. You could, yeah. It's hard to know. You know, it may not be getting made because people think we don't want it, but that might be exactly what we want to see. So who knows? Okay, further in Bowden's words, wonder is intimately connected with creativity. All creative ideas are, by definition, valued in some way. Many make us grasp with awe and delight. Many make us gasp with awe and delight. Relatedly, Nico Frieda glosses wonder as a receptive state of surprise and amazement that we experience in response to unexpected stimuli. Bowden helpfully elaborates on the precise species of unexpectedness that underpins creative surprise. It is, she tells us, an affective response to having conceptual space transformed, or in other words, perceiving something we previously thought impossible, something that doesn't fit within our established conceptual vision of the world. Similarly, Haidt and Keltner theorize that awe is occasioned by phenomena that demand accommodation, where, quote, accommodation refers to the Piagetian process of adjusting mental structures that cannot assimilate a new experience. Prototypical awe involves a challenge to or negation of mental structures when mental structures expand to accommodate truths never before known, end quote. Reading this alongside the comments of Bowden and Frieda, we can conclude that perceiving an object as saliently original, that is, demanding accommodation, elicits an intrinsically valuable effect. We feel amazed, that is, captivated and transfixed in an agreeable manner, even if other sentiments might be mixed in with, or even overwhelm this emotional response. This indicates that salient originality bears an inherent value for us insofar as it elicits an effect of surprise akin to wonder and awe. The unexpected upshot of these observations is that now the value condition of creativity appears to be superfluous, it being met a fortiori with the satisfaction of the originality condition, provided this latter condition is taken in the strong sense of salient originality requiring accommodation. Yeah, so they're saying, look, if anything is actually this original, we already like it. So it doesn't have to, we don't need a secondary theory to say, oh, and it's valued. So this was part of what I was criticizing earlier when I say, well, what kind of social value is this? Because when I said, look, does the artwork give you the beauty, or does it deliver you the value of beauties via the artwork? It's not the artwork itself, but the beauty you get. But that's the whole point, is they're saying, look, now the just being original inherently gets you the value. It's not that the artwork delivers the beauty. It's that it is the beauty there. So salient originality requiring accommodation gets you the value, and so there is no value condition at this point, which is interesting. You could still do it more descriptively, not normatively, but yeah, we'll see where this goes. The author continues, this brings us back to the problem of original nonsense, which supposedly testifies to the fact that we do not in fact experience creative surprise in the face of everything that we perceive as original. However, we ought to ask whether we genuinely perceive the originality of the madman's novel ramblings. It would, I think, be more accurate to say that we merely acknowledge the probable uniqueness of deranged gibberish, just as we can say a fingerprint is original without this originality being truly salient to us. Furthermore, a deranged exclamation is in fact quite easily subsumed under the concept of mad gibberish. In spite of its probable novelty, we might say that we acknowledge its token novelty, but not its typology, which is what would demand accommodation. Yeah. So it's the difference between randomness and originality. Certain things are random. We don't give a shit about randomness. I mean, maybe in computer science you do, but we don't give a shit about randomness. Like my fingerprints are random within the range of that. Are they original? Original means this accommodation thing. So this is kind of weird. Maybe the value is in this needing of accommodation thing, where it says, oh, we have to readjust what we know. But when things are random, we don't have to worry about randomness. We know what randomness is, or it is of that type, randomness. Genuinely perceiving originality means recognizing that relevant classificatory criteria have been bent or broken and, as a result, temporarily failing to conceptually subsume the phenomena under consideration. These are the conditions for having what I call an appropriate experience of a creative phenomenon. In cases of original nonsense, we do not perceive originality in the thicker sense required for the evocation of surprise. Shuckleman says, or with randomness, there is nothing to know. Yeah, that's exactly the issue here, is that there's something to know. That's what this, the temporarily failing to conceptually subsume the phenomenon. There is something to know there, and you know that, and you don't have it. Like, so there's something to be understood, and you don't quite get it yet, but you know there's something to be understood. When something's random, there's nothing to be understood. Yeah, Stockton says randomness in the everyday creative is really not important. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the thing here. So, I would have been, I think, like, if they had brought up this distinction between the randomness and the creative, this would have helped here, but I think they made their point. It's like, yeah, the madman's gibberish, that's random. The artist is creative. Now, where's the line between the two? We don't always know. Sakno says, I would say the randomness in every day is mostly a problem that a human needs to figure out. Yes, we definitely need to be able to distinguish between the two. But, like, very fine line between madness and genius sometimes, as they say. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but, it's close. What's it called? There was a Grothendieck, or whatever his name. It was a French, or he was living in France. I don't know if he was French. But there was a French mathematician. And he was like living off, in some like small little cottage, and basically may have lost his mind, has all these like books full of stuff, but for all we know, there's like genius math in there too. Thank you, Megalomorph. So it's like, yeah, he was living off in some like little cottage in France. No one really knew what he was up to. Like, not even, like, I don't even think his family knew what he was up to, but still, like, may have come up with like great math theorems, and, but a lot of madness too, it looks like. Okay, objections to the inherent conception of creative value. The conception of creative value qua inherent value needs to be defended against a number of potential objections. Let's begin with the most obvious of these. The reader is liable to protest that neither she nor any other right-minded people experience any intrinsically rewarding affect in the face of many malevolent phenomena that they nonetheless feel quite justified in labeling creative. For example, a colleague of mine objected that she believed that the crimes to which Bernie Madoff pled guilty in 2009 were sufficiently novel for her to classify them as creative, and yet while considering them, she did not experience any kind of intrinsically rewarding effect. Viper says, great article about him here if anyone wants to read about him after this. Yeah, I think that was, did I read that one? I don't know if I read, oh yeah, that may have been the one, it got posted in Discord, I think I read that a while back. So Nietzsche but mathematician, got it, yeah. But like Sock now, if you want to check out like that article that Vipers posted is good. Megalomorph, he quit math in like his 30s or 40s. He revolutionized algebraic geometry, then had a breakdown when he realized so much math could be used for war, ran off to countryside, asked people to burn all of his work. Yeah. So yeah, he kept writing apparently, but it wasn't math, and maybe he was still doing math. I don't know. But like this is the issue, is that thin line between the what might actually be worthwhile and stuff that just isn't, because it doesn't have any connection either with math or like reality. So who knows? But this is one of the dangers in philosophy, is that you end up doing metaphysics, like pure metaphysics that doesn't connect back to any reality, and you just get lost in the sauce basically. Okay. When pressed, though, it transpired that my colleague could not in fact pick out how Madoff's complex Ponzi scheme broke with the conventions of investment fraud. I mean, there was something about Madoff that was scale and how we pulled it off. But, like, you have to be creative in fooling people, but that's not too unusual. Just, any scammer fools people. And you have to be there is something to be done that is creative in doing that and fooling people, but still, it may not be that interesting. Consequently, she could not legitimately claim to have an appropriate, that is, informed experience of the Madoff case. Her response was that such experience was unnecessary since she's read in a reputable broadsheet that this was indeed an instance of creative fraud, and that she had therefore had the fact on good authority. She added that even in lieu of this, she could infer from Madoff's evidentiary proficiency in exploring loopholes and evading detection that his actions were creative in kind. Yeah, so this is just to say, there's small amounts of creativity. So like Donald Trump scamming people by telling them bullshit, this is not very creative. Most people know that he's full of shit, but like he does it because it works. It's not super creative, but it works and he knows it enough. Oh, where's my audio? Oh, it's so low, I can't hear it. What's up? Ivan, welcome in. Sorry, I don't know if anyone could hear it. Author Raid Globus, what's going on? How you doing? How you doing, Globus? But like Ivan, how is the rest of your stream? How's it going? That was the think like a physicist. Please no, I do not want to think like a physicist. But yeah, Ivan, how is the rest of your stream? What's going on? Well, it's good. As always, if you need to raid and run, feel free to do so. Thank you for sending your people this way. Fun stream tonight. Good. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Noger, No Gray, No Grayo, whatever you want to call me. It's cool. It doesn't matter. Just don't be a jerk about it. I'm a philosopher. I philosophize. Philosophizer. I guess we talk philosophy here. I mean, I do philosophical logic, metaphysics, philosophy of science, theory of knowledge. Not so much philosophy of science anymore, but used to. But we're talking about bad things and are they creative? Like, are terrorist attacks works of creative art? Megalomorph, I think a lot of the moneyed people think he's full of shit. Or they think some of what he does is full of shit. They think it's a bit of an act. They're like the ones that like the economic policies do. And I think that's a non-trivial amount of his voters think that Trump is just a showman, and they're perfectly happy with the showman in charge as long as he pushes the policies that they like. Oh, just a lighthearted topic tonight? Yeah. This was a request from Viper's Gratitude, so that's all. But this is fun, We're talking about aesthetics, we're talking about ethics, we're talking about how they mix, we're talking, so these are kind of it's got some juicy topics. We're talking about artists and how they perceive things. So it's yeah. Biloob, whatever, how do you say your name? I don't know, but I hope you're cool. Tell me if you want me to say it one way or another, but Biloob, how do I define terrorism? I have no fucking clue. I don't do politics. Generally, terrorism, I think, is acts meant to scare people. Like political fear. That's the idea of terrorism. I don't have a much more sophisticated definition than that. But yeah, like the 9/11 attacks where they crashed planes into big buildings and killed lots of people. That was an act of terrorism so far as, yes, it blew up some of New York, but it was also a spectacle. It meant to change things. It wasn't just the killing people. It's doing it in a grand manner. And the idea that you're making a spectacle out of a political statement, I think that's terrorism. I did not know we discussed terrorism so much. Do not stereotype me. If I get suspended again from reading this, Vipers. Stockton's physics is a metaphysical mess today, like the idea of multiverse is quite in the realm of philosophy. Yeah, there's definitely overlaps. And so I get annoyed with people that say physicists can't do philosophy or philosophers can't do physics. Everyone has there's definitely philosophy of physics. The physicists are discussing philosophical topics. That would be a philosophical topic. And the physicists have smart things to say. They're smart people. So it's there are overlaps in the topics and the issues that go on at that point. So, you know, it's like, yeah, physicists have something to say for philosophy, and I think vice versa. I know Ivan's position on this is that philosophers should just be letting the scientists run amok and keep them safe from all the people trying to screw with science. I think we have a wider scope, but like, you know, we do have overlap. Megamorph says, speaking of being a philosophizer, have you ever decided to make a second channel devoted strictly to medical ethics called Philosophizer? Oh, God. Yes, that's a funny joke, Megalomorph. Pfizer should make a dental floss called it Philosophizer. Maybe for St. Patrick's Day, they could be Philosophizer. Yes. That's not what you said. Sure it isn't, Ivan. I'm sure that's not what you said. We dream the same dreams. Yeah. Tomorrow's St. Patrick's Day. So everyone put a little O in their name. Nogur o Nogur. We'll call her Nogre o Nogre. I don't know. Yeah. Well, what did you say, Ivan? What did you say? The job of philosophy is to protect... philosopher's job is to protect physics from bad philosophy or something. Something along those lines. I don't remember. Streamer brain. Sorry. Ivan says, I meant philosophers should defeat the crappy pseudo-philosophy employed by creationists, etc. Yeah. We do try to do that. That is something we get to every so often. I'm busy, man. I got other things. I'm worried about like logical paradoxes and other silly things. So, yeah. Wouldn't you like it if we actually had a foundation for our logic that like didn't break? Wouldn't you like it if we had a foundation for our math that didn't break? Like, people work on that stuff. It's like, everything's broken. You guys just don't realize it's broken. It's like, everything works and it's like, it's a little lane. It's like, in philosophy, I feel like we're still in like, you know, ancient times where, you know, oh yeah, the Aristotelian physics, that works under very limited circumstances. And then, you know, we get a little bit later in history and then more physics. We can do more physics. But like, we're still in like pre-relativistic times and like, philosophy. We're still working under limited circumstances. We can only do so much. It's like maybe one day we'll, you know, grow up, but we're not there yet. Megalomorph says, just because we have no way to tell if Zermel ZFC is consistent doesn't mean it's inconsistent. Yeah, but wouldn't it be nice to know stuff like that? We just assume it works. Like, we just like, it's okay. It's all good. Are you sure? Like, is that really a good way to do it? Now it's full of math and turns people off. Well, that's fair too. But like, there are other things besides just like defeating the creationists. Like, yeah. By Loop says, I mean, things only exist because of other things are broken, right? Well, philosophy operates on questions. What questions are asked? What are good questions? What are bad questions? You get certain answers to certain questions, and then you realize you got more questions. Like, okay, we no longer have to worry about, say, Zeno's paradoxes anymore. We have basically solved some things in like physics and psychology, but like just because we figured out some things in psychology is a huge business. Some things are broken, but like we've solved some of them. But once we figure out we can do psychology, holy shit, we've got a whole new scientific field. So I mean, psychology isn't broken, but once we learned that we can do it, then all of a sudden, a whole lot of stuff opened up for us. Megalomorph says, but Gödel showed that we can't tell if any sufficiently rich, consistent axiomatic system is consistent, so it's a non-question. No, people are still working on Gödel's proofs. There are people who disagree with Gödel in various ways. You can't just assume Gödel is like coming down from God. Now, this is in the realm of philosophy. Most, as far as I know, a lot of mathematicians just say Gödel was correct. That is not a universally held sentiment. So it's just like, yeah, most of the time. Not all of the time. I heard a talk earlier this year where people were showing ways around Gödel's proofs. So it's not a non-question. And that was actually a published paper. They were developing it, but it was already on ArchiveX, already accepted for publication. So people are still working on these. Like, philosophy moves slow. The fact that Gödel's going to last 100 years, that's great. But like, will it last 500? Will it last 1,000? That is a very different question. Yep. Okay. Okay, but anyway, back to the paper. What we're talking about in this paper, for anyone that came in on RAID and doesn't know what we do, we read papers, we evaluate the philosophy. This is about, like I was saying, bad things and can they be creative. We were just talking about the Ponzi scheme that Madoff made. So yeah. Oh, Socknow says, actually, physicists got me interested in philosophy, but I had issues with the idea of metaphysics, like it was theology that slipped in, but you got into understanding the domain of the irreal, really informed me as well, but the really political philosophy was more your forte in your personal life, but I hate how political philosophy today is to be used in philosophy, business management, and economics, more marketing bullshit. Yes. So it's like, yeah, there are interesting questions all over, and you don't realize that there's a lot of overlap. And some of the questions that you end up asking in physics will be the same that you ask in political philosophy. You don't realize it until you like have done both for a long time, and you'll be like, oh shit, the same issue of like, say, underdetermination in science is the same sort of thing of underdetermination in, say, like politics and like what's going on with the populace. There's all sorts of overlap. So it's like, yeah. Ivan says, actually, quote, the role of good philosophy is to defend science against bad philosophy, end quote, is more a message for physicists that dismiss philosophy. Oh, well, I'm 100% with you on that. If you're trying to sucker the physicists into treating us better, I really appreciate that. So, thank you. You know, anyone who dismisses philosophy, I've said this before, that just means you've taken the received knowledge that you've received from like history and just taking that as like the truth verbatim. But really, that's a long line of history, long line of physicists, long line of philosophers that went into making the science of today as good as it is, and letting those people think that it's just like the way the world is. But that's a huge amount of work, time and effort by like good people who put in a lot of work to make it as good as it is, so that these people can just ignore everything else. Bad man with gun versus good man with gun. Exactly, Chocolate Mints. Okay, anyway, here we go. So, even though the lady is saying it's creative, even though she wasn't in awe of it, she was just kind of didn't really understand what Madoff was doing. And she said she had it on good authority that it was creative because she read it in a magazine. Okay. Socknow says, yeah, the political is also a metaphysic, like the idea of what good governance is, and irrealist thinking like good governance isn't biological tree or something, shit like that. Yeah. And that's what you get. You start realizing there are metaphysical concepts from like biology getting applied to like government like it's natural. Government, in what way is it natural? But that's a different discussion. All right. So back to the paper. Neither of her counter-arguments falsify my thesis, the author's thesis. In fact, they both inadvertently vindicate the author's position. The subtext of her second response is that there were someone familiar with the intricacies and conventions of investment banking, which is to say someone informed and therefore capable of appropriately experiencing the novelty of Madoff's scam to examine the forms of agency that issued in the scandal. That person would surely remark the salient original activity. Yeah. So anyone who understood Madoff's scam would be in awe of some of what he did to get around the regulators. Aside from this, her second response is unacceptably inductive. Her first response, on the other hand, which cites a broadsheet, involves a legitimate testimony-based predication of creativity. Nonetheless, much like her second response, it too presupposes the validity of the author's thesis. In this instance, my colleague's grounds for ascribing creativity are, it turns out, parasitic on somebody else's alleged perception of salient originality, that of a financial journalist possessing the specialized knowledge required for an appropriate experience of the case at hand. And to be sure, we find someone who not only became intimately acquainted with the Madoff case, but who was himself actually swindled in the fraud. Specifically, John Maccabee was indeed surprised. Quote, somebody asked me if I'm angry, and I'm not. I'm amazed by the complexity, the lunacy, the absolute pathological lunacy. End quote. Yeah, apparently the scale of Madoff's Ponzi scheme was just mind-boggling. And so to keep that all running correctly, you know, there had to be something going on. The full experience, yeah. So, but that's the issue, is that you do need to know something to appreciate creativity. Like, you know, when I was a kid, my parents dragged me around to art museums, and I didn't understand the art at first. I still don't understand some art, but like I understand a lot of art now because I was dragged around for a long time. And you start to pick up on it, but you don't know what's going on, and you don't get to experience the creativity in the right way. It doesn't draw you in because you have no experiences in common with the artist. You don't know what's important. But like there is a background knowledge here, and so you can say, okay, I know this is creative, but I don't experience it myself, but I can recognize that something's going on. So there is something to that. All right, there are other cases in which our ascriptions of creativity are parasitic on previous or hypothetical experiences of surprise. For example, Bowden distinguishes between historical creativity, H creativity, and psychological creativity, P creativity. Whereas the former describes instances of creative novelty that are without historical precedent, the latter comprehends instances of creativity in which, though not without historical precedent, an agent fashions a creative product without any prior knowledge of the historical precedent. Bailub says, I think it's only creative for an external point of view, Madoff probably just following the next step. I disagree with that. It's not like there was a manual for what Madoff was doing. And it's not like unless he had, like, there's no reason to think he had his entire life mapped out how he was going to run it. So why would you think he was just following the next step and not having to think up the next step on the fly? Because it's not like there's any reason, there was no one else he was copying and doing this. So I disagree with that, Bailub. If you have a counter, like, let me know what you think, but like, I don't think that's right. Chocolate says there's some sort of there is sort of a notion of criminals being creative in fiction, maybe not so much in practice. Yeah, so I always go back to the original James Bond, Dr. No, and he like captures James Bond. He was like, I thought you might appreciate, you might be someone that would appreciate the genius that's going on here, how clever Dr. No is. He wanted someone to recognize his genius in doing this. And then he gets very frustrated with James Bond. He says, but you're still just a stupid policeman. So it's like, yeah. So, I mean, the meme is going around. You know, James Bond is so, like, you know, dated and like silly. I mean, they had in 1957 there was this like secret Nazi industrialist rocket man trying to like take over the world. I mean, who would ever think that's like a realistic idea? Okay. When Richard Fosbury pioneered the Fosbury flop, a manner of performing the high jump that involves jumping over the back bar first, it was an H creative act. So yeah, historically had no precedent in the high bar, I guess. On the other hand, when 2 years later, Canadian athlete Debbie Brill developed a similar technique without any prior knowledge of Fosbury's innovation, this was P creative, but not H creative. When we make attributions of P creativity with knowledge of the H creative precedent, it might be argued that we experience no surprise because no accommodation is required. However, the ascription is nonetheless parasitic on the surprise elicited by the precedent. Bailub says, like, I understand creative as being innovative and seeing new big picture, but I suspect personally Madoff was just trying to escape the shit, being unknowingly creative. That's fair, but there is no sense here where they have to know it. You don't have to know that you're being creative. The person doing it doesn't have to be, like, reflectively like, oh, I'm being creative now. Like, they don't have to be an artist. They could just be doing it. That doesn't mean they weren't being creative. That just means they were unreflective while they were doing it. So I agree that, like, this is like, you are right, but I think it's okay in this context. What's up, Frank? Frank says, similar to the Fosbury flop, there's a long jump technique with a forward flip that is better than the normal jump, but they ruled it illegal because they thought it was too dangerous. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, like, these are innovations people do, but then they decide that's not how they want the sport to go. They say, look, yeah, we know you'll get farther, but we're not doing that thing. You could also get farther with springs on your feet. We're not doing that. Okay. Like, that's true. Socknow says, think of Dr. Osborn from Spider-Man. Like, that's more recent, on the 007 citation. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so it's fair. Like, if someone recreates it or you never knew about the history, then you're going to be you'll think it's psychologically original, even if it's not historically original. Yeah. Funny they see it and then they're inspired to make a new rule. Yeah, but I mean, this happens. We're still judging the people's ability, to long jump or whatever. We're just saying you have to long jump in a certain way. Yeah. Okay. We identify that there is a structural analogy between these two cases and infer that it would have evoked surprise if the contingent global historical context had been otherwise. It is therefore not strictly necessary that every ascription of creative supervene on the predicator's direct experience of surprise, but even under the aforementioned circumstances, ascription of P creativity are nonetheless still indirectly conditioned by the perception of the salient originality of H creativity. As such, the perception of salient originality conditions all ascriptions of creativity, though it can do so either directly, that is, when we appropriately experience a creative phenomenon, or indirectly, as in the case of ascriptions that are parasitic on historical creativity, or as we saw above, the case of legitimate testimony-based ascriptions. Yeah, so look, things that have never been done before in history, and things that you don't know about in history, you can all say are creative because you're recreating something that was new to you. I mean, that does make some sense. Another potential objection is that it's patently incorrect to assert that people invariably have positively valenced experiences in response to suffering creative torture. Yeah, the tortured person doesn't have to be like, oh, this is such a creative torture. But like someone watching the torture has to be like, it's the, I love you work. Believe me, I love watching you work from The Princess Bride. That could be interesting. All right. Further, it is not psychologically possible, indeed quite plausible, that some creative criminals, drug addicts for example, could fail to experience any positively valenced affect when they think through or remember their own creative criminal behavior, which they engaged in out of a weakness of will. These objections can be diffused without too much difficulty, since it does not seem likely that either the torture victim or the narcotic benumbed criminal would make an ascription of creativity in these circumstances. They shove a live snake up your ass, yeah. Their perception is either too overwhelmed by pain or disrupted by psychotropic substances for them to care. They are incapable of appropriately experiencing their own ingenuity. Just because the majority of people or an authoritative group to whom that majority defer ascribe creativity to a particular phenomena does not mean that every individual faced with that phenomena necessarily experiences a positively valenced affect or correspondingly ascribes creativity to said phenomena. And this, I think, is actually the response to Bailoop's question above. The person doing it doesn't have to know they're being creative. It's not necessary for that person to know it. It's like, as the author just stated here, like there is a majority of people or an authoritative group. Like that can be, there can be other people that decide something's creative after the fact or like looking in on the situation. He goes like St. Patrick would have wanted. That's a good one, Aris. I hate that they label criminal on the drug thing. Yeah, I mean, stodgy academics. Okay. One might also disagree with the way in which I am proposing that we collapse the value condition into the originality condition. Stockton is like, drug addicts are patients, not criminals. Correct. But like, you know. Let me see something. Yeah, creative criminals, drug addicts, for example. Yeah. Yeah, there's no, I was trying to save the author, but there's no real reason to. They're wrong about that. The author is wrong about that. Okay. All right, we do not consider everything that defies easy accommodation and thereby elicits surprise a creative product. Natural phenomena are a case in hand. The astoundingly novel and awe-inspiring experience of viewing the Alps for the first time does not warrant denoting them a creative product, though creationists would no doubt feel inclined to do so. Likewise, were we to discover a cowpat resembling the Mona Lisa, we might marvel at the coincidence, but we would not be inclined to call it a creative product. A Cheeto in the shape of Jumpman, the Michael Jordan like jumping, the iconic like shot of him doing that, is up for auction at the moment. It's expected to fetch a lot of money. Okay, this illustrates that we do indeed need to stipulate another condition of predicating creativity, namely that we possess the justified belief that the salient originality under consideration is the result of purposeful agency. Related to this is the possibility of discovering that a product that elicited creative surprise was in fact the result of imitative agency, that the responsible agent had merely copied the creative agency of another. Where this occurs, the creative value is transferred to the product that we consider the prototype. We therefore should expand the aforementioned condition, stipulating that the purposeful agency concerned must be non-imitative, where the imitation is understood as unmodified replication. I think that's silly. They could just say, look, it goes back to the original creative person, and this is just a copy of that. Like, who cares about how many times, like, it was made? Like, what's his name with the soup cans? Shit. I start losing name recall and word recall. But the guy who made the ready-mades in Dadaist art, the idea that something could be just a urinal is a work of art. So there is like a counter. I don't like the way the authors Warhol, thank you Vipers. Like, I don't like what the author is doing here. I think they are right. Like, they have the right point. Like, the imitation is not the actual creative work, but the original work that they are imitating is. And so you're just getting a copy of it, but like, that's okay. Yeah, ready-mades were Duchamp. Yeah, thank you, Laughing Jesus. But that's what I meant. I meant Warhol and Duchamp. So, like, thank you. How you doing, Latvian? Chocolate says, if it is original to you, who cares if you're looking at a reproduction? That's my point here. So, yeah. Marcel Duchamp. I saw one of the original copies when it came to New York, and I was there with my brother, and it was funny because I was walking along and we were talking, and my brother, we get along very well, mind you. We're on good terms, we get along very well, but we drive each other nuts every so often. Yeah, the fountain. Yeah, it's like he made a few of them. Like, he made one, then he made a few. So, like, they are originals, but they're copies. But I was... the Duchamp, I was like, and I started calling him Duchamp, and my brother got so angry, and he was like, don't you know any better? Like, you're better than calling him Duchamp. Like, hey, you say his name right? I was like, you was calling me stupid. I was calling him Marcel Duchamp for like the first half of the day. And he was like, wait, what? He was like, oh yeah, you were. I was like, you jackass, I was fucking with you. He got so angry for like 30 seconds, and he was like, oh, now you're fucking with me, fucking hell. So yeah. You're curious where Pride and Prejudice in Zombies falls in this discussion. I don't know. I have not seen Pride and Prejudice in Zombies, but like somewhere. Yeah, so I don't agree with the author's take right here, but the point is correct. Yeah, you don't have to worry so much about, like, there is an original creative act at some point. Okay. Finally, it is worth noting that some have convincingly argued that originality is not an aesthetic value. That aesthetic value does not necessarily accrue to the originality. Sibley, for example, distinguishes between the novel and the original, where the former more often hints at the trivial, the gimmicky, the mere thrill of the new, the quirky, the quickly exhausted than original does. Okay, whatever. Original artworks, he continues, give us an enduring sense of their substantive contribution relative to other artworks. However, even this does not constitute the aesthetic merit of such works, which resides in other intrinsic, that is, non-relative qualities. Originality only amplifies the value of these qualities. While the author agrees that it's crucial to observe this distinction, it does not jeopardize the inherent conception of creative value. Author's claim is that not that creative value entails aesthetic value. Indeed, creative value can accrue to superficial novelty within the parameters of the inherent value model, which allows for individuals to label a work creative while holding it to be of negative aesthetic worth. Yeah. So, like, torture devices might not be aesthetically pleasing, but they might be creative in the ways that they hurt people. And you could say, wow, that is an aesthetically, astoundingly creative and unusual way to hurt people. And that would be bad. Again, the example of The Princess Bride, where they have the machine that sucks life out of people. Okay, from the above, we can conclude that that those who predicate creativity to particular malevolent products are justified in doing so only when the following two jointly necessary and sufficient conditions have been met. 1. They perceive such products as saliently original, that is, requiring accommodation and eliciting surprise. And 2. They possess the justified belief that such products have resulted from purposeful, non-imitative agency. Okay, having posited these conditions, it's worthwhile underscoring that the author's purpose has not been to construct and defend an essentialist conception of creativity. Indeed, creativity is a notion that we would do well to consider as being marked by an ineradicable degree of wooliness. That's a sentence right there. For one, its use is constantly evolving. For example, as creationism goes out of vogue, we become correspondingly less inclined to refer to natural phenomena as creative products. Moreover, the debate is still very much alive as to what counts as an agent capable of purposeful action. Thus, it remains moot whether non-human animals or evolutionary processes can legitimately be referred to as creative without implicitly attributing represented ends to these objects. And of course, remember, this is a 2020 paper, so this is pre the current generation of AIs. So the creativity that has been attributed to artificial intelligence, this is before that, and this would be, they would ding them over here on agency, because non-imitative agency, I don't think the current AIs would actually pass this. So they would be saliently original, but they'd still be imitative agency, but I'm not sure. So like this paper suffers from just being a little behind contemporary technology. But like, it's interesting. Maybe they'll get to that in the next few pages. I don't know, but like, this is missing the first of the big AIs, I think. Because if it was published in 2020, it was written in 2019, and I think that was before like the original ChatGPT like exploded on the scene. So, okay. Continuing. And there will no doubt be myriad borderline cases where the legitimacy of ascriptions is open for debate. While the conditions I've provided can, as I've argued, hold as plausible general criteria for identifying legitimate ascriptions of creativity, their primary function is to shed light on the kinds of human creativity in which we have a real practical interest in fostering or foreclosing. The particular strength of these criteria is that they are able to comprehend both malevolent and non-malevolent creative products under a single concept of creativity, one that demands modification but not rejection of the standard view. ChatGPT is 2020. Thank you, Globus. Yeah, I was wondering if you were still in chat, but like, so this is 2020. So they like this work. I would be very unsurprised if it has been referenced now in some of the philosophical literature, talking about AIs and creativity, because this seems like a good way of looking at it, because you can now say, okay, does this cause us novelty? Yes, a lot of that stuff does make us think about like creative stuff, but does it also do the number 2 thing right here, where there's resulted from purposeful non-imitative agency? That might fail, so people might be interested in that. If anyone doesn't know Globus, go hang out with Globus. Globus is cool. He talks AI news and tech and explains it, and so good stuff over there. Okay. I should restate that my position must not be confused with the claim that acts of malevolent creativity, such as the 9/11 attacks, are of positive value. This is patently not the case. My point is rather that even when confronted by acts that we judge to be depraved and of overwhelmingly negative worth, we can still be said to experience a measure of positive affect if we deem them saliently original. This also resolves Gaut's foiled terror plot objection to Cropley et al., insofar as it explains why we would be inclined to call the terrorist plans creative even if they had failed. These plans need not have fulfilled their instrumental function in any measure in order to meet the 2 above mentioned conditions. The example of 9/11 is regrettably recent and sensitive in nature, and is therefore not conducive to impartial inquiry. This said, it does not seem controversial to claim that our evaluation of any object involving a complex cognitive act of accounting, and where we are not hindered by the sensitivity of the examples at hand, we readily admit and even capitalize on people's sense of wonder in the face of malevolent products. The commercial success of museums such as the London Dungeons, for example, attests to the attractive, fascinating quality of torture devices and is completely at odds with the characterization of such products as being simple negative value. Indeed, there's a growing body of literature investigating the positive effects associated with our experience of malevolent ingenuity and morbid curiosity. Yeah, I mean, this is fair too. Like, I know there's the elders for Twitch in chat, but we all remember the rotten.coms where you got to see like all the terrible things on the internet. Goatsy, of course, is a running meme still in this community. Like, we see posts of that quite often. So yeah. What are you making? Case of making lemonade? What chocolate? What's with the lemonade? I mean, I want some, but like, yeah. What's that in reference to? But like, yeah. So what was I saying? I forgot already. Streamer brain. Encyclopedia Dramatica. Yeah. So all these old like the things from the this is Internet 2.0 times, not Internet 1.0. I was around for Internet 1.0 in like the mid 90s. But Internet 2.0 times where it was you got all these like websites and like terrible things, but it was fascinating on its own. Chocolate says, finding positive things, inevitable negative things. You don't like lemonade? You don't like you're making lemons when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. There we go. Okay. I gotcha. I didn't get the full saying. Sorry. Okay. In this final section, we should briefly explore the possible instrumental value of products that we consider to be creative. This does not mean that the appreciation of any such instrumental value conditions our predications of creativity at a conscious level. As I've argued above, the most plausible candidate for creative value is the intrinsically valuable experience of surprise elicited by saliently original products, which themselves can therefore be designated inherently valuable. The question that should function as our gambit in this closing section is as following. Why would we have developed in such a way as to experience a species of surprise akin to wonder and awe when perceiving saliently original phenomena, irrespective of their ostensibly instrumental value? A guy opens a tea shop, eventually goes to, yeah. Megalomorph says, speaking of making lemonade, I saw something that pointed out that lemons are not naturally occurring. They are a crossbreed between a citron and a bitter orange. So life didn't give us lemons. We made them ourselves. I'm not quite sure what the moral of this is. Well, we may have made them ourselves, but there's a lot of cross, breeding in nature too. So we could have, like, in citrons and whatever. Like, yeah. But like, yeah. Still... Yeah, there's still a lot of things that are not great. Like chocolate on its own is not very tasty. We have to do a lot of things to chocolate, but we make chocolate bars out of it. So it's like, yeah. Yes, a regular lemon party. Everyone should Google that because that's a fun time. You can't prove nature would not have done it. And there's plenty of other examples that, would prove the same saying. But, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Okay. This can be, all right, so why would we just like novelty? This can be asked from both an evolutionary biological and a cultural perspective. Generally speaking, evolutionary psychologists work on the assumption that particular phenomena elicit positive affective responses because those phenomena are, or were at some point in the past, beneficial to our evolutionary fitness, that is to say, conducive to our survival and reproduction. Excuse me. Talking for a long time now. We would therefore expect phenomena that are instrumentally harmful to our well-being to exclusively stimulate revulsion. And following on from this, it would appear to be intuitively the case that experiencing positive effects in response to malevolence would constitute a neurological maladaptation. Likewise, at a cultural level, why might such affective responses have been actively cultivated instead of being suppressed, for example, in the popularization of tragic art, horror films, and torture museums? Without entering into the convoluted philosophical debate inaugurated by Plato and Aristotle regarding the value of tragedy, I want to survey a number of cogent reasons that might explain why malevolently creative products elicit a positive affective response. This should also lend the conclusions of the previous section further credibility. Yeah. I mean, like I said, we've discussed why we like horror on these philosophy roulette, and I know Aris has discussed it over on his channel too. I keep saying this, Aris. If anyone doesn't know, I think I shouted. Yeah, I did shout him out before. I forget, but we're gonna shout him out again. If you don't know Aris, go follow Aris. He is an ethicist and a classical. He knows an ethicist and a philosopher of classical Greek and Roman philosophy, cynic, Stoic philosophy, so knows lots of good stuff. Also is on the trolley call-in side of Twitch, so you can have some very unexpected discussions over there, so it's fun. Malevolent reminds me of a line from 30 Rock. Lemon's father, Dick, said a family gathering is not a lemon party without old Dick. Yeah, so. Okay. Why do we like these scary things? Yeah, let's see what the author says. There's a wealth of evidence to suggest that wonder in the face of the incomprehensible, that is the salient and original, stimulates learning. William McDougall was one of the first psychologists to theorize wonder as the emotional mainspring of humanity's highest cultural achievements. He goes so far as to assert that wonder must be regarded as one of the principal roots of both science and religion. He attributes this to the fact that wonder is the emotion that accompanies the affect of curiosity, which is the source of the immensely increased power over nature and over man that we now possess. Izzard and Ackerman also enumerate some of the adaptive qualities of the emotion of interest, which they claim overlaps with that of wonder. Quote, interest motivates exploration and learning and guarantees the person's engagement in the environment. Survival and adaptation require such engagement. Interest supports creativity because it immerses one in the object or task and cues a sense of possibility. Interest is the only emotion that can sustain long-term constructive or creative endeavors. End quote. And as Robert Fuller emphasizes, quote, the emotion of interest provides the motivation for the development of intelligence and personal growth, end quote. Fuller surmises that, quote, wonder is part of the organism's tragic capacity to imbue the world with an alluring quality, end quote. When you imbue the world with an alluring quality, is the world not alluring in its own self? Questions. He further theorizes that wonder drives this inquisitive orientation because the conviction grows stronger that we have chanced on an unexplored world which, like the universe around us, appears to have no boundaries. There must, we speculate, be other discoveries to be made here by the inquiring mind. Experiencing a surprised sense of wonder in relation to a phenomena that demands accommodation can thus stimulate an adaptive yen for discovering vis-a-vis the wider world, one that promotes sociocultural flourishing. Insofar as creative products stimulate wonder, then they can also be said to be endowed with instrumental value for the predicator, that is, providing she affirms the end of biological fitness or personal and sociocultural flourishing. Yeah, so it's good to discover new stuff. That's how we learn things about the world. That's why we like it. That's fair. Contrary to Cropley et al.'s functional model of instrumental creative value, then, when an individual judges a terror plot to be saliently original, it likely has some underlying instrumental value for her and her collective, namely insofar as it stimulates inquiry not just into the specific causes of the event and what could be done to prevent its reoccurrence, but also inquiry into a more general sense. It is worth noting that once again these insights have been anticipated by theories of the sublime. For both Schiller and Kant, feeling of the sublime were interpreted as a provocation to comprehend the sublime phenomena under consideration, that is, to apprehend the great and sublime by means of reason. I mean, that's fair. Like, what was it? The cosmic horror of, I can't remember anymore because I'm talking too long. But cosmic horrors, the idea that, like, we get near them, we lose our minds. But, like, yeah, Lovecraft, thank you, Vipers. Like, brain starts going, seriously. But, like, you can still get the idea, like, we're trying to comprehend things beyond our abilities. And so it's like, just because it's good or bad, it's a god. And, like, that sort of sublime is still there. Yeah, H.P. Lovecraft. Speaking of other crappy people. Conclusion. The principal objective of this article was to explain whether the value condition of creativity, which is intuitively correct, can be rendered consistent with the fact that we predicate creativity to an array of malevolent phenomena. We saw how Cropley et al., in order to accommodate this counterexample, received the value condition in terms of instrumental value for the creative agent, yet we found that Cropley et al., like Novitz, Gout, and Hills and Bird, constructed their alternative approach on the now rebutted supposition that malevolent products are of self-evident absolute negative value. Yes, Harry Potter Lovecraft. Although the net value of a creative product may indeed be negative, there is abundant evidence to suggest that it may nonetheless bear a modicum of positive value, and moreover that such value should be understood as a conditioning legitimate ascriptions of creativity. What has also been brought to light is that creative products should, generally speaking, be considered valuable in two distinct senses. First, in an inherent sense, insofar as they elicit a positively balanced, though not simply pleasurable affect of surprise, an affect that shares features with wonder, awe, and curiosity, and second, in an instrumental sense, insofar as they provoke our interest and spur us to explore the world, which on average fosters both sociocultural flourishing and biological fitness. This said, it is only the former species of value that actively condition our predications of creativity. Indeed, we are often entirely unaware of the latter. We have also seen that our ascriptions of creativity are conditioned by two criteria and are separately necessary and jointly sufficient, and which amount to significant modification of the standard view. First, that a given product exhibits salient originality, and second, that we hold the justified belief that the product under consideration a result of purposeful, non-imitative agency. These conclusions do not entail that creative products can only bear one form of value, thus functional and aesthetic value are both perfectly compatible with the inherent value of creative surprise. My contention is rather that it is the inherent value of salient originality that is essential to creative products in general. Other forms of value are merely accidental to or distinguish particular subsets of creative products. The significance of this recalibrated conception of creative value is far from being purely theoretical. As McDougall once suggested, our innate disposition to wonder can grow or wither depending on whether or not it is exercised. In order to profit maximally from the value specific to creative products and to avert a regrettable pearls before swine types of situation, we would do well to nurture our receptivity to salient originality. In other words, our susceptibility to the affect of creative surprise, just as energetically as we currently promote creative agency. Acknowledging and immersing ourselves in the experience of surprise, wonder, awe, and curiosity evoked by creative products, even those of a malevolent ilk, can encourage an expedient and optimistic curiosity in the world. Vipers, okay, we're done with this. Hooray! I mean, it took full 2 hours to read this. So yeah, Viper says Lovecraft is much funnier when you read him in his native Rhode Island accent, which I'm sure living so close I can do. Yeah, I've seen the dark universe yawning, where the black planets roll without aim, where they roll in the high unhated, without I can't do it without knowledge or luster or nime. Yeah, fucking New England bullshit. Globus says, I get where this is coming from when you watch John Wick. He has creative ways to kill people, and that sparks interest and entertainment. Yeah, I think I mentioned it maybe before you got rated in. Like I was talking about, I like, I write, so I like my pens, and I write, like I have a lot of different pens I write with, but I was saying, like, I write with pencils too, but you could also kill people like John Wick with pencils. I was like, you could kill like 5 people with this pencil. But anyway, here's what we do. Now that the paper's over, we give it a rating. What do you think about it? If you're in chat, you're welcome to rate. These are better TTV emotes, so like if you have the extension installed, you should see it in your chat, or you can see them below me in chat below. If you thought this was fun, give it a brain dance. Spelling and capitalization do matter here. Brain dance for fun ideas, makes the brain dance. Scream for existential or artistic drama. I mean, it would be fair. We did talk about artistic things here. Things. Ouroboros, Nagoro, for deeper ancient ideas. Nog knife, slicing and dicing arguments. Nog navel, navel gazing only for academics. Nog turd, all style, no substance, still poop underneath. Nog grapes for big claims that shrivel up. You can also use the global vote yay and vote nay on Twitch, and I also my vote meh. Note, I sort of calculate a global score out of this. Anything in the green makes the score go up, anything in the red makes the score go down, and the meh makes everything go towards the middle. Yeah, so Vipers rates it a brain dance, a scream, a knife, and a yay. Globus gives it a yay and a brain dance. Chocolate gives it a brain dance, a knife, and an Ouroboros. Yeah, I think these are all fair. Like, I had minor gripes with the argumentation in this paper. I thought they got a few things wrong, or like this. Like, I gave the example of the ready-mades in Warhol, the Duchamp ready-mades. Like, I thought they didn't. Like, I think they, like, a few of their arguments missed the mark. Overall, though, pretty good. Like, I thought there was a, made, like, they could have, like, they even lamented their use of 9/11 and terrorist acts as creative artworks. There could have been other examples. These may have been very useful because there were easy pull quotes you can get from, like, Damien Hirst. I can't remember the other person's name, but, like, Damien Hirst has had that easy pull quote on how he was impressed with the terrorist act being such a spectacle or whatever it was. Was online for the Oro. Chocolate says, yeah. So yeah, thank you, Latvian Jesus. Okay, they gave it a meh, but also an Ouroboros and a brain dance. Thank you for rating. Adam tuned in, gave it a scream and a grapes. Yeah, so, but like, I even also agree, like, the grapes is fair because a lot of the arguments you could think maybe it didn't hit the way you wanted them to. So it's like, it's, I thought generally this was pretty good. So what am I going to rate it? I had a few fun ideas. Maybe could have used a few more though. Megamorph says, can I request that you make another emote, Nog Nog, that has Nog from DS9? Not quite what sure would be meant to express. If you want to make it, these are Better TTV emotes. I can just upload them to Better TTV. So, like, it's actually not hard. Like, these aren't like Twitch emotes, global emotes that you could use, like, if you subscribe. Like, just uploading them to, like, Better TTV is not that big of a deal. Globus says, feels like they should take another crack at it, like 75% of the way there. I think that's fair. Like, this could have been a really, really great paper, as is just a, like, good to great paper. I don't think it's a, also I think it's suffering from just missing out on the AI art, by being 2 years too soon. And that would have, like, really made it very, very relevant for contemporary discussions. And so I think it's feeling its age, even though it's only 4 years old, which in philosophy is nothing. But, like, just because of the contemporary situation, like, I feel like, 4 years ago, it wouldn't be 75. It would have been like 85, 90%. Now it's feeling 75. Just feel how the author feels? Yeah, exactly. But what am I going to say? I'm going to give this a scream because we're talking about artsy things and what counts as quality art, and can we have, like, things that are bad be quality art? So I'm actually going to give this 2 screams. Like, this was very existential or artistic. We're talking art here. They did some argumentation here, so I'll give them a Nog knife. Were these ideas really fun? Does this deserve a brain dance? I'm going to give it a Nog grapes also, even though this was mostly good, and I'm going to give it a vote yay. Hey, what's up at all, Cosmo? You're just giving it turds because you just got here? That's fair. You can do that. So yeah, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to give it double scream, knife, grapes, and a yay. So, like, a lot of good things. I felt it missed on a few spots, and it's just like, yeah. But, like, yeah. So, how you doing, all, Cosmo? I hope you're having a good day. So yeah. If anyone else wants to get their rating in, now's the time. 60 seconds to go, and then we'll go head off. Thank you, Vipers, for suggesting this paper. This was a good paper, I thought.